Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into a topic that's a little bit maybe counterintuitive at first glance.
Okay.
Oversharing and autism.
Mm.
We often, associate autism with social withdrawal, so
Mm.
the idea of someone on the spectrum oversharing might seem a little puzzling.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that this behavior could actually be a form of trauma response?
Oh, wow.
That's what we're going to try to unravel today, using this insightful blog post as our guide.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really highlights how much we still have to learn about, the diverse ways that autism can manifest in people's lives.
Absolutely. And so let's kind of break down this idea of oversharing a little further. The blog defines it as divulging deeply personal information to people who aren't necessarily close confidants, which might leave some people feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just being a social faux pas. The post argues that for many on the spectrum, oversharing can be like a deeply rooted need for connection and understanding, a way of processing past trauma.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
If we consider that autistic individuals are statistically more likely to experience trauma
Yeah.
due to societal pressures, sensory overload,
Right.
or even just the constant effort of trying to fit into a world that isn't really designed for their neurotype. Oversharing starts to look less like a social misstep and more like a coping mechanism.
So it's almost like a cry for help,
Yeah.
a way of trying to bridge that disconnect between their inner world and the expectations of a neurotypical society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author of the blog even shares a personal anecdote about revealing very private information to virtual strangers online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a raw and honest example of the vulnerability that can drive this behavior.
It makes you think about how quick we are to judge someone's actions without understanding the underlying motivations, right? We might see someone oversharing and label them as awkward or inappropriate.
Right.
But perhaps what they're really seeking is validation and understanding.
And that's precisely the danger of misinterpreting these behaviors.
Yeah.
We risk, further isolating individuals who are already struggling to connect.
Right.
The blog highlights this with the concept of the oversharing social isolation cycle.
Okay, let's unpack this cycle.
Yeah.
What does it look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine someone on the spectrum oversharing as a way to cope with past trauma. Perhaps they reveal something deeply personal to a casual acquaintance.
Right.
The other person, not knowing how to respond, might pull away or offer unhelpful advice.
Right.
This reinforces the individual's sense of isolation, leading them to overshare again in the future, hoping for a different outcome.
It's a heartbreaking cycle.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the need for increased awareness and empathy. We need to recognize that oversharing in this context is often a desperate attempt to connect,
Yeah.
not a deliberate breach of social norms.
I couldn't agree more. And that brings us to the question of how we can break this cycle, both on an individual and a societal level. Welcome back to our deep dive into oversharing and autism.
We've been talking about how oversharing can be a response to trauma, but I think it's important to acknowledge that this experience can be even more complex for women.
Right.
Their challenges are often overlooked or misdiagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why that might be.
That's a great point. While the blog posts we're examining don't solely focus on autistic women,
Right.
they do touch on some crucial elements relevant to this conversation.
Sorry.
If we consider the concept of masking, which is the act of suppressing autistic traits to fit in,
Yeah.
it often manifests more intensely in women. Societal expectations can place immense pressure on women to behave in certain ways.
Right.
And this can lead autistic women to mask even more extensively than men.
So they're navigating a sort of double bind.
Yeah.
They're dealing with the inherent challenges of autism. And on top of that, they're grappling with societal expectations tied to their gender.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this can have far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
One of the most significant is the potential for delayed diagnosis, because their symptoms might be masked or misattributed to anxiety or depression.
Right.
Autistic women may not receive the support they need early on.
That delay in diagnosis must have a profound impact on their lives.
Yeah.
It's not just about accessing resources.
Right.
It's about understanding themselves and their experiences.
Absolutely. Without a proper diagnosis, many autistic women might internalize negative self-beliefs, feeling like there's something inherently wrong with them.
Right.
The blog posts emphasize the importance of raising awareness about the unique ways autism presents in women
Yeah.
and advocating for better support systems tailored to their needs.
This idea of intersectionality is so crucial.
Yeah.
We can't talk about autism in isolation.
Right.
We need to recognize how it intersects with gender, race,
Yeah.
socioeconomic background, and other factors that shape an individual's experience.
I couldn't agree more. And bringing this back to oversharing,
Yeah.
we can see how the traumas experienced by autistic women might be compounded by sexism, discrimination,
Right.
or even just the constant pressure to conform to gender norms.
So in a way, their oversharing could be seen as an attempt to break free from those constraints,
Yeah.
to express themselves authentically, even if it means being perceived as too much or too intense.
That's a really insightful observation, and it underscores the need for more nuanced and compassionate conversations about oversharing.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond simplistic labels
Right.
and
Yeah.
strive to understand the complex interplay of factors contributing to this behavior.
It's about recognizing that everyone's experience is unique, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding and supporting autistic individuals.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a culture of empathy and acceptance, where people feel safe to be themselves without fear of judgment or rejection.
Which is ultimately what we all crave, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be seen, heard, and valued for who we truly are.
Absolutely. Now, before we conclude, there's one more crucial aspect I'd like to explore.
Okay.
Strategies for breaking the cycle of oversharing and social isolation. We touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth revisiting with a specific focus on empowerment and self-advocacy.
That's a great point. Let's delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
It's time to shift our focus from understanding the problem to exploring potential solutions. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring the connection between oversharing and autism and how it can be a trauma response. But now I'm really interested in, delving into solutions.
Okay.
How can we break this cycle of oversharing and social isolation?
Well, the blog we've been discussing, it doesn't just highlight the challenges.
Right.
It also offers a sense of hope and empowerment.
Okay.
It emphasizes that positive change is possible both for individuals and for society as a whole.
That's encouraging to hear. What specific strategies does the blog suggest for individuals who might be struggling with this cycle?
One of the most powerful tools, according to the blog, is self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing that oversharing can often stem from a past trauma, learning to identify personal triggers, and understanding the impulse to overshare in certain situations can be incredibly valuable. It's about, gaining control rather than feeling controlled by those urges.
So it's not about suppressing those feelings entirely,
Right.
but more about finding healthier ways to process and express them.
Exactly. The blog emphasizes the importance of finding safe and supportive environments to work through those complex emotions.
Right.
This could involve therapy journaling or even creative expression. It could also be as simple as having a trusted friend or family member who you can confide in without fear of judgment.
Having that sense of being truly heard and understood can make all the difference.
Right.
It can help alleviate those feelings of isolation and create a sense of validation and security. But what about when oversharing happens in situations where that level of trust isn't established?
That's where the blog's emphasis on self-advocacy comes in. Okay.
Learning to communicate your needs clearly and assertively, setting boundaries, and advocating for accommodations or support when needed can be incredibly empowering.
Right.
It's about navigating social situations on your own terms rather than feeling pressured to conform to expectations that might not feel comfortable.
That takes a lot of courage, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To speak up for yourself, especially when society at large doesn't always understand or accommodate neurodiversity.
It does take courage, but the blog frames it as a journey of empowerment. The more you advocate for yourself, the more confident you become in your ability to navigate the world authentically.
That's a powerful message. It shifts the focus from feeling powerless to taking control. But individual action can only go so far. What about society's role in breaking this cycle? What can we do collectively to create a more supportive environment for autistic individuals?
This is where it gets really interesting. The blog challenges us to move beyond mere tolerance towards true acceptance.
It encourages us to educate ourselves about autism, challenge our own preconceived notions, and be more mindful of the language we use.
So it's not just about being nice to autistic people,
Right.
but about actively dismantling those systemic barriers and prejudices that contribute to their marginalization.
Precisely.
Right.
It's about fostering a world where autistic individuals feel valued, respected, and empowered to be their authentic selves without the pressure to mask or conform.
And wouldn't that benefit everyone? Really?
Yeah.
Creating a society that embraces neurodiversity ultimately creates a richer, more vibrant tapestry of human experience.
I couldn't agree more. And it all starts with understanding empathy and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
Mm.
We need to be willing to listen, learn, and challenge our own assumptions about what normal looks like.
That reminds me of a final thought-provoking question from the blog.
Okay.
If we as a society are quicker to label behavior as inappropriate than to understand its underlying causes, what does that say about our capacity for empathy and inclusion?
It's a powerful question that really makes you pause and reflect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It challenges us to examine our own biases and consider the perspectives of those who might experience the world differently than we do.
It's a call to action, a reminder that building a truly inclusive world requires constant effort, compassion, and a willingness to engage with the unfamiliar floor. And that brings our deep dive to a close. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of oversharing and autism. We hope this conversation has sparked some new insights and encouraged you to continue learning about this important topic. Remember, every step we take towards understanding and acceptance brings us closer to a more compassionate and inclusive world,